Cheers. There we go.
So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the last session of this month's Midweek Matters. We are really, really lucky to have with us Minelli and Jennifer from the Weinberg Centre. And they're actually phoning in from the USA. So it's their lunchtime and it's our supper time. And what they've been very kindly coming to talk about is the service that is offered over at the Weinberg Centre regarding supporting positive mental health. I don't want to go into too much detail, but enough to let you know that Minelli is a social worker, and among many of your talents, Minelli and Jennifer, care coordinator. And they've got some really fascinating projects and outreach work that they do at the centre, supporting people with cerebral palsy in the life as a lifelong condition. I think that I'll hand over to you two, if that's okay, and you can take it from here. But thank you very much again for joining us this evening.
No, thank you. As Miriam so kindly introduced us, and my name is Minelli, and my co-presenter is Jennifer Pimentel, and we're from the Weinberg Center in the U.S. So we're based out of New York City. So our intention for today's presentation is because we know there's some differences within the healthcare systems, but I feel like just the overall need that is provided or the description of the service, it can be very much relatable to either what you would like to have access to or have had access. And so we're hoping that our presentation, we're able to connect around similar experiences that have worked well or haven't worked well, and then also how it's all impacted mental health. So with that, I will let Jennifer quickly just say hello and introduce herself, and then hand it back off to me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Pimentel, and I am the care coordinator here at the Weinberg Family Cerebral Palsy Center. I form part of the multidisciplinary team and approach at our center, and part of my role is providing supportive services to patients and their families. So, as a care coordinator, what I do is that I assist families and patients with coordinating their medical care within our hospital here, which is Columbia University and New York Presbyterian. And I also connect them to community resources as needed, which I will discuss a little bit in more detail as we go along.
All right, so at this point, I'm going to share our presentation. And I should probably hit the presentation view too. There we go. All right. Can you all see this screen right here all covered nice and big? Great. So we're going to take a lifespan perspective around mental health and care coordination. But before we start, because we're going to hit a lot of topics that probably have either some moments of sadness, joy, and different complex emotions, I like to start with a little body scan and some meditation. And that's going to be about 15 minutes. So with a body scan, we start with just our breath, something that is so essential to life and to where we're present. So with our breath is we can breathe in and out through the mouth with the sound. Breathe in through the nose and breathe out through your mouth with the sound. And you just feel the air just expanding your diaphragm. So as we settle in and we keep doing deep breath, we're going to check in with our body to see where we're at. Start with the head. Go down to the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the throat, both of your shoulders, down to your arms, feeling on your back, your chest. See if there's any tightness, tension in the body. Check in to see where your body and how it's feeling. Down to the trunk, down your legs, kneecaps, down to the calves and feet. All right. So when you're ready, back to center and see where you felt it all in your body. All right. So make a mental note of where you felt any of that in your body. Now we're going to go into a sound bath where I do invite you, if you haven't, to close your eyes and then continue to scan your body throughout the sound bath. And I want to be able to share my screen again with sound. All right, so before we start the sound bath, I want to bring you in with this quote. Beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but its affirmation, by each of us claiming the identities and our cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in the world.
Oh, dear. No.
All right. Take a deep breath and sigh it out. Okay. So just checking in to feel like a little bit more relaxed, getting ready for the night, afternoon for us, for Jennifer and I. All right. So thank you all for engaging in that sound bath to help us start us out. So we wanted to do the presentation. We wanted to do a sound bath to begin with. More me than Jennifer, more than anything, is because I think that emotions can get very charged with all of these topics, especially because we're asking people to revisit the past and to be able to know how come and why certain things are the way they are now in their future or in their present in regards to emotional responses. Although the outline looks a lot around the past, around infants, children, and adolescents, we do spend a good time around exploring more emotions in adulthood, which is our hope for the majority of the presentation. So as you can see here, we're going to go through the life stages of infant and children, and we're always going to alternate between those life stages between care coordination and mental health. So, and each part will have a little bit more of information. Now, the other part that I also wanted to share with all of you is that through each life stage, we're going to stop for a little bit and we're going to, well, more for infants and adolescents, just a little bit, and do a little bit of exercises of more talking, like more of a experiential exercise and being able to conversate more. If at any point you don't feel comfortable answering those questions that I have on the screen, you have every right to ask me those questions as well. So I like it to be very much an even playing field. If I'm asking you to explore emotions, you have every right to ask me to explore emotions around adolescence, childhood, and adulthood. So with that, I will hand it off to Jennifer to talk a little bit about care coordination.
Thank you, Manali, and thank you for, I feel much more relaxed after
Oh,
that.
I'm so sorry. I think I switched it off.
After that meditation session. So part of my role as a care coordinator is providing supportive services to patients and their families by helping them find the care they need, whether it's navigating their medical care or locating community-based supports. So today I will be discussing the common care coordination needs throughout the lifespan, from pediatric age to transition age and adult age. I think it is important to recognize that cerebral palsy does not look the same for every person, and the needs of one patient may not be the same as another. So pediatric patients with CP require a team of medical professionals to oversee all aspects of their care. Typically, for children ages 0 to 3, a referral to early intervention is made by a doctor, social worker, care coordinator, or the family based on a diagnosis such as CP or a high risk of developmental delay. Here in the US, early intervention is a government publicly funded program which provides services for free or at a reduced cost for any child who is eligible. Some of these services may include physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, a special education instructor, and assistive technology such as speech boards, hearing aids, adaptive eating utensils, and electronics such as iPads or other tablets to help with communication or educational purposes. The family is also supported via family counseling and by having a network of therapists to teach them tips, skills, and strategies, and that they can also do with their children while the early intervention therapists are not there, and it also helps them navigate this new journey. Next slide.
All right. So at this part of like the infant and early childhood around, because this entire presentation is structured around like what happens to an individual with like CP, just from very beginning early on. So postpartum depression impacts mothers, especially after like birth. Most new moms experience this after childbirth, and like that makes sense. You have a lot of hormones in you, and that's a lot of those hormones are connected to this child, and then like the child comes out, and sometimes it happens prematurely. And then with all of that being said, there's a lot of stress that is happening around like childbirth, whether it's a childbirth that is before the pregnancy is fully complete, and with postpartum depression that happens to mothers, that also impacts children. So we're looking at particularly like children with CP and how this can also then look into adulthood. So with infants that have depressed mothers, there can be insecure attachment, ambivalent attachment, negative effect, a difficult time with regulating emotions. And we can see this a little bit more in adulthood. Like let's say in your 30s, if you're having a hard time engaging in, let's say, a difficult discussion with a partner or with a friend, and you're having a hard time regulating your emotions to navigate this conversation, that can definitely be connected not only to what is happening in that moment, but what has happened in childhood that has had a repeated pattern throughout your life where it's been tough to know how to regulate your emotions. Another impact that postpartum depression can have on children is the impact of adaptive function, internalizing and externalizing problems, affective disorders, anxiety disorders, and contact disorders, which I kind of have a little bit of issue with contact disorders because I think children mostly respond to like their environment and what's going on around them, unless there's like more of a difference there. So now here is like my favorite part of the presentation that I wanted to share with you, is that I think it's so important when you're looking at children with cerebral palsy or children with disabilities, period, or any children at all. It's mental health and developing a self-esteem and identity development and mental health. So what that means is just creating a balance between proactive and protective disability socialization that helps everyone in the family feel more confident navigating life transitions. So with that piece being said, is what I have noticed as I've worked with the disability community, different diagnoses through years, is that there's a big disconnect around talking about the fact that there is a disability in the family. Like, it's like the big thing nobody talks about. There's nothing wrong with you. You're totally fine. Granted, yes, all of that, but the life is going to be different, and that's okay. Going back to the quote in the beginning, like, it's not about, disconnecting from our differences, but also like knowing that being different is okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with being different. And it's about finding a community, and like this group that you all have here is part of like the proactive disability socialization, where you find community to have like a heightened awareness of value-based community around kindness, integrity, critical consciousness, humor, all of those things. But I will say, like, as you all had there, and in particular here at the Weinberg Center, how I have seen that community be formed to be so strong has been through the help of care coordination. Like, folks like Jennifer are able to identify, like, there is this common need I'm seeing all around that is not necessarily medical, but it is impacting medical, and it's mental health, but there's a little bit more than mental health, that it's like just concrete needs in life. How can we bring all of these people together? So folks like Jennifer play like such an essential role to this piece around, like, if there isn't a community of connecting all these folks, of like, hey, you're all experiencing all of these same things. I think you would all like to like get together and talk to each other around what's happening. And when things like that happen, especially at an early age, that sets a lot of people up for like just having a higher self-esteem and not as much connecting to some of these emotions that I'm about to share about. So I always think to get to the positive, you also have to have a balance of looking at the negative too. So part of the negative is like some of the things that may happen with emotions, which is shame. And a lot of these I got from Brene Brown. So for example, hey
Sorry,
Miriam.
yeah, sorry, Minelli, sorry to interrupt. I'm just wondering, on my screen, I can see I can see a big slide and a smaller slide. I didn't know whether
Oh,
you can make the big slide any bigger.
let me see if I can do that. Let me stop my screen.
Sorry.
Share again. And that's okay. All right.
Oh, that's good.
Much better. Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.
Okay. So, going back to emotions and self-esteem, a lot of what impacts like self-esteem development that we definitely do see in adulthood is shame, like, and I am bad. It's more of a focus on a self-behavior resulting at a flawed or unworthy of loved and belonging. And shame is not a driver of change. Shame, if anything, a lot of the time when people feel like they're embarrassed, more of what they're talking about is more shame. So like, for example, you get back a quiz and there's an F, and then there's like a negative self-talk, which I see a lot with clients, is like, I'm so I like to avoid ableist language, but for the purpose of the presentation of the fact that this does happen and acknowledging that it does happen is why I have to have it here. And then there's guilt that also happens when things happen that are bad. I did something bad. The focus is on the behavior, and guilt is the discomfort that we feel that when we're being evaluated, if we've done something that we feel like we failed. Like going to a party and going to a party instead of studying for a quiz was so irresponsible of me. That's an expression that leads to guilt. Instead of shame would be go back to that let me just point to it real quick, versus this part right here, right? Now, humiliation is like you've been belittled or put down by someone and you left feeling unworthy or not feeling unworthy of connection or disgusted. And that right there is a lot different because you feel sad and enraged by humiliation at times. Or a positive expression of humiliation can be around like you feel kind of like shocked, but then also at the same time you can use humor in it. So a quick example that I can use myself as humiliation, we had this nice, really big fancy meeting, and you're kind of quiet in these fancy meetings and there's one person talking at a time. I took a bottle of water and I spilled it all over my lap. Mortified, humiliated in that very moment. But then I laughed at myself. I was like, of course, Manelli, you would just spill like a bottle of water on your skirt. Thankfully, we're here for another hour. It's going to dry up. It's only water. No one's going to see that. And then the last one here is embarrassment. I did something to make, I did something that made me feel uncomfortable, but I know I'm not alone, that everyone does these kinds of things. So maybe instead of humiliation, I had a little bit of both humiliation and embarrassment, because I actually spilled the whole bottle of water on myself in front of somebody who was very important. And they kind of looked at me like, okay, so this person just spilled a whole bottle of water on herself. And I was thinking to myself, yes, I did. I did spill a bottle of water on myself. Now, so with humiliation and all of these feelings, a lot of what comes up in our support groups, and where I'll like stop sharing my screen and we'll do a little bit more of an experiential exercise, is that when we've accessed those emotions in group, and especially going back to childhood, phys ed or gym has come up at times around like where you have to do physical movement. And I don't know if you've all experienced this in the UK, but I know when I was a child around the age of 10, they made this big effort of integrating like all classes and regardless of disability, but with no education and knowledge around how to support the folks with disabilities, whether you're neurodivergent, whether you have a physical disability, none whatsoever. So I'm one of those folks who is neurodivergent and has a learning disability. So when that big combination happened, there was like no training for the teachers, nothing like that. So one of the things that came up during our support groups is memories around phys ed classes. And everybody was talking about like just their painful experiences of like a teacher asking them to run in front of everyone, or everybody run at the same pace as that person. And like it's like very much like not thinking more critically around like, maybe this wasn't a good idea. Maybe we should ask that person. Maybe we should have had a conversation beforehand. And so what we did at that moment, because everybody, including myself, had a horror moment with like a phys ed teacher, is that we decided, you know what? Why don't, if you remember the name of that teacher, say the name of that teacher and then the F word to that teacher. So like, so-and-so, F you. And it really helps like ease and go back to that traumatic memory and have like a new understanding of the sense of like, that's not on me. That's not on anyone, because the teacher should have been supported in order to know how to support me in that moment. And here I am to this day, very conscious about how I walk. And now I'm thinking to myself, like, actually, why should I be that conscious about how I walk? I need the appropriate support. So I wanted to stop right there and sort of check in with all of you to see how that all sounds. I mean, I don't know, maybe not cursing, but you can use something like a little smaller than the F word that we used in our group.
I can certainly think of a few teachers that I would like to put in that category. The one that made me do the cross country every week and then put me into detention every week when I came back last. She is somebody that I would definitely like to do that to. So I can relate.
Well, thank you, Emma, for sharing. And then I said this before, but you all have the right to ask me anything too.
I'll ask you, Manelli. Who would you give it to? Who would you talk to like that?
Oh, I already know. And you know what? He's not even on this Zoom link. I'll say his name, Gary Harry. He was awful. He was awful. And I named him during the group. I was like, Gary Harry. I remember that name very clearly. Not him.
Manelli, I was just wondering if I could ask you a question. Because things seem to be more very, and especially I noticed during the film, but because of the film Trip Camp, things seem to be a lot more over the years in America. It seems to become a lot more liberalized in terms of disability, in terms of things where there are barriers over here, there are no barriers over there, and you guys seem more confident and forthright, which I think is great. You know, with your attitudes, and I know you do have, you know, there are the anxieties and so forth, but politically and so forth, it does seem to be you guys seem to be a lot more liberated than we are over here.
It's so interesting. I had a friend, and she identifies as someone with a physical disability. She said that she felt that in the UK it was so much better than it is here in the United States.
I mean, we're getting there. We are, you know, I mean, we are, you know, we get, you know, things have changed. I mean, things are different now to, say, for example, they were in the 70s. But in the 70s, in America, you're banging down the doors, you know, and sort of like major rallies and things like that to get things changing, and where we was sort of, I mean, America really was the US disability movement was a catalyst worldwide for everybody, for every disability activist. You know, for you know, so you know, it's just I'm just interested to it. Perhaps both of your points, if that's okay on that. I don't know if Jennifer wants to comment, or perhaps it is something that, you know, seeing as you said you want to just to ask you, and you know, perhaps it's more prevalent that you ask. I don't know.
No, thank you so much, Dean. And I truly mean it, just in case, because some people always feel like they're presenting, we can't ask questions. I like it more to be a conversation more than anything, but I also wanted to give you as much resources, materials as possible. I will say within the Weinberg Center, I have seen our patient population in particular, they're very politically active. They will tell us exactly what they want. Very quick funny story. I started like back in February, and then I had my first patient advisory council. So the Weinberg Center has a patient advisory council. They sat Jennifer and I down, and they said to us, so we would like to have a mentorship program. Make it happen within the center. That's how we can have a mentorship program. Because we want to be each other's guides in regards to how to navigate transitioning to living with your parents to living alone, or how to navigate how to apply for colleges and how to have that conversation with college admissions and professors. We want to create an intergeneration where we support each other, and respectfully, we love you able-bodied folks, but sit down, we want to take charge of it. Like, they said it flat out to us. And I said, well, both Jennifer and I was like, okay, we will do it. And then you let us know how we can support. And it's really been a process of us, like, them explaining to us, this is how we feel during these moments. This is what we would like to see. And I think what has worked really well for all of us is that Jennifer and I just come with it humbly, knowing that we will not always know everything, but we will always listen, and we will always ask more questions in the sense of, like, how did how did we do here? How did that make you feel? Was it comfortable? Was it not? But knowing that that's not applicable to the entire disability community, that is applicable to this group of people. It gives us a sense, but not the answer.
So,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you all. And I really do think that if you all feel like you want more out of your community, you want more out of, like, let's say your apartment building, join the what's it called, Jennifer? I'm sorry. Like, is it a board?
Like the building association.
Thank you, building association. So here in the US, it's called like building association. Like, you join a different committee and you say like, hey, these are the needs. These are how people can benefit. And then you just create little small coalitions, and they can exist not only in person, but also in digital spaces. You know, lockdown showed us that we do not always need to do things, you know, in person. We can do things virtually. We actually found a lot of resources through hashtags on Instagram, on Facebook, figuring out, okay, where are the little pockets of places? And like, that is a way of where you can create a community that where you don't have to call on different people. And like, if you want to see something done, create a community around, we all have this shared goal. Let's use our skill set to get our goal done. All right, so I'm gonna bring back up the nice big screen. All right. So at this point, we're trying to go as fast as possible, but also take our time with, there we go, to get to adulthood, because that's the fun part.
Thank you. So this brings us into the next age group, which would be adolescents. So historically, cerebral palsy information and treatment have focused on children, but approximately 90% of those diagnosed with the condition now live into adulthood. Transitioning to adulthood comes with struggles for everyone, but our mission, and through care coordination, it is to help people with CP of all ages optimize the way they manage the effects of their condition and navigating transitions in healthcare, education, and employment, which are pretty much the three main areas that always come up when it goes from transitioning from childhood to adulthood, or well, to adolescence. In the area of employment, some of the care coordination needs, or what I do in assisting patients, is that I help them, or I provide information about enrolling in workforce development programs to help assess career plans and provide skill training. Also encouraging patients about researching colleges and universities that provide accommodations for individuals with disabilities, obtaining adapted driver's license or navigational skills training through programs such as Accessible Metro, adaptive driving programs, rehabilitation hospitals, or ambulatory transportation. For healthcare needs in the United States, when an individual turns 18, they legally have control of their own care, which sometimes this is something that some of our younger patients don't know. But at 18, you do have control of your own healthcare. Someone who is directing their own care is making all health related decisions for themselves. Having control of these aspects of care can lead to an individual having a greater sense of independence and control over their life. And although the transition to directing one's own care can be empowering, we do recognize that it can also be difficult. Many hospitals do not have a transition policy or program, and there also tends to be fewer medical specialists available for adults when it comes to lifelong conditions like cerebral palsy. CP centers such as the Weinberg family strive to provide families and patients with a bridge of care for a lifetime, so through transition age and adulthood. And lastly, just as Manelli just finished mentioning, establishing a community via virtual or in-person support groups, joining peer mentor programs, or online supports help to promote a support system and help to facilitate independence. Next slide, Manelli.
Thank you. So like in that process of all of that Jennifer shared, you're exploring independence within adolescence. Like you're sort of, I've heard this a lot within our CP Center patients. It's like they're leaving the system. They're leaving the supported system of like education, medical, and they're sort of transitioning off into adulthood. But I've heard from a lot of folks, and I wanted to do a quick poll to see who agrees and they've experienced this, that once they leave that education system, there is no sort of guide around like what should they do with their medical care, what should they do in regards to when they go to college, how should they communicate that. There was never any support around like how would that look like. And I wanted to take a quick poll with all of you here to see if that has been your experience.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, the transition experience in America sounds very similar to here. It sort of exists until you're 18 and then you sort of very quickly potentially drop off a cliff.
Yeah. And at that moment, you're experiencing so many transitions, like so many transitions. Like, you know, there is the transition around like if let's say you go away to college and like dorm within the room within that area, you're leaving your entire system of security, of which has been your family, your friends, your normal bus route or metro route that you knew for a long time, to then learn this entire new one. And that causes a lot of emotions around vulnerability. And vulnerability can be something that is absolutely beautiful depending where you're at and who you're with, or it can be something that is extremely frightening, where it causes stress, being overwhelmed, and not feeling like you're really connected. You know, I love Brene Brown, and Brene Brown says that connection is as energy. It's between people when they see and feel heard, valued, when they can give you and receive without judgment. And it's strengthen the relationship. It's connection with it. There's a connection with our neurobiology that we literally need it. This is why our experiences of disconnect are so painful. And then when you already have a chronic physical disability and you're experiencing pain, when there's emotional pain, that physical pain is almost always heightened. I have not met a person in my past 5 years working with the disability community, explicitly physical disability community, that I haven't heard like when they're stressed or they're feeling depressed, that their body is not reacting as well. That is something I hear across the board almost always. And then right here, Brene has this beautiful quote around like the need for connection, which is growth, is a priority. It's a core motivation in people's life. In growth fostering relationships, people are and to bring themselves most fully and authentically into connection. Because with disconnection, when you don't have that system and you sort of don't have like, let's say, a peer mentor or someone to go to when you're navigating that transition, whether it be living on your own, going to college, navigating first professional job, there is a disconnection, which is often equated to social rejection, social exclusion, isolation. And there's these feelings of disconnection that actually share some neural pathways of feelings of physical pain. The current neuroscience research shows that pain and feelings of disconnection are often as real as physical pain. So right here, I had a little bit of an exercise that we can all do if you'd like to. And I can stop the screen, but I wanted to give you a sense. Once again, I put this exercise up there. But if none of you feel comfortable doing the exercise, but then you want me to model it, that's totally fine. So it's an experiential exercise where we can either go back to adolescence around something that you had to do in the future, or honestly, we can look at what's going on now in your current future that you'd like to explore. So don't all raise your hand up at once. Who wants to go? Either ask me the question or be the person to be asked the question.
Can I be the
I'll
person?
do it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go on then, Mandy. Go for it.
I'll do it.
All right, Mandy, it's you and me. Ready? All right. So now with this future scenario, do you want to go back to adolescence and tap into that? Or would you like to tap into what's currently going on in your life and looking at the future?
Looking at the future from now.
Say it again, I didn't hear that.
From now.
From now, okay.
Yeah.
So what would you like to be different in your future?
I would like to maybe get out more, have a job,
Have a job?
and be more active in my community.
Okay, all right. So those are a lot of things all at once. So if you can choose one that connects with a little bit more joy, curiosity, which one of those that you all said is connected more to those emotions?
Have a job.
Have a job. Okay. All right. Now, when you picture yourself doing your job successfully and whatever you need to do in the future, what would you like happen? And what skills do you need to make this happen?
Well, I would think I would need to maybe go to college first.
Okay. You want to go to college first to make that happen?
I don't know.
It's totally okay, Mandy. So the reason I ask, because perhaps it depends on the job. And also, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. Carry on.
No. I was just going to ask more questions in the sense of, so you want to be able to get a job?
Yep.
All right. Are there support systems in the UK around, like, let's say, like a job training program or a supportive system around like a trade force or anything like that?
Not that I know of.
You know, okay. You know of organizations that might be able to share more information around that, if there is, or if they have any knowledge around it?
I could look online,
Yeah,
probably
got-
find on.
maybe Emma and Miriam can be guys around that to get you connected to a few of those.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Most definitely, yeah.
All right. So we already identified two possible resources. Like after this meeting, you can email and then you can find out a little bit more. So what words go best with that picture? And let me know if this picture is okay, of you reaching out to Emma and Miriam around getting more resources to get a job that express core belief about yourself now.
How would I feel about it?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess. Maybe a little bit nervous.
A little bit nervous? Okay.
Maybe.
Where do you feel the nervousness in your body?
Just because I don't really know them that well, and they don't really know me.
But you had the bravery and the beauty of speaking up today. That's huge. That's a huge piece, Mandy.
Oh, it's
Like, you vocalized that. Like, let's honor that right there. You told people what you needed, how you want to be supported. And they're
I
saying,
just
go
feel
ahead.
that I'm always at home all the time,
Mhm.
And so I have to put you in the picture, but I have a child, but that's she's a teenager, so she's going to be off doing her own thing, where I've spent years looking after her,
Mhm.
and so I don't really know how to word it. So she's going to be off doing her own thing shortly, and I'll just be at home. And so I think I've got a lot of skills through being a mother that I
Mhm.
could maybe use, because I haven't been out for so long. Kind of makes me nervous.
No, thank you for sharing. Is it okay if I tap into the rest of the group and see? Because I feel like that feeling around nervous around this big transition, like your child's going off, and it's like now it's you at home. Is it okay if I tap into the group if they resonate with that feeling of like this is a big transition?
Yeah. Yep.
Sarah, I see your hand up. Do you want to share something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mandy, that is absolutely normal for everybody, not just for people with cerebral palsy. It's a huge life transition, and I wonder whether you could start seeing that nervousness as excitement, because it's a very similar emotion. And if you swap that over, it could be really exciting, couldn't it?
I never thought about it like that.
Mm.
Don't my mix. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I never thought about it that way.
Mm.
Like new possibilities.
Yeah.
Thank
Wendy,
you.
I can see it in your face. You're like really, it's really having this discussion now, and I can see the pleasure, and I can see, you know, that it's just like something's been switched on for you, and you're thinking about it, and it's really nice to be part of that, and you deserve, you know, you can get there, you can do it.
Hope so.
Yeah, you can do it, you can do it.
And
It's
you
just
raise, go ahead.
sorry.
No, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Karen. It's just to put myself out there is quite difficult.
But don't forget, you've had a lot of, I mean, you've been, as you say, you've been looking after your daughter for many years, and you've got to sort of give yourself a bit of slack, because you've not done it. And you might not know how to, it's like anything that it's not been done for a while. And this can apply to anybody in any field. You know, you just got to give yourself time and perhaps knock on a few doors and say, either Miriam or Emma or any one of us, or, you know, and say, you know, well, I've not done this before. How do I go about it? How did you go about it? And people swap information, and that becomes shared knowledge then, you know, but you will get there.
Thank you.
You will get there.
Thank you.
Not only that, Mandy, you raised a whole child that is now going out into the world and feeling confident to do that on their own. You did that.
Well, she's not quite there yet. But in the next year, couple of years, she'll be off.
Yeah, and like, you know, going back to what Sarah said, like that nervousness can also be excitement. She's not quite there yet, but when she gets there, take credit. You had a big part of that.
Uh-huh.
Children learn from their parents.
Yep.
Thank you so
suppose that-
much, Mandy. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So we're gonna try to honor the beauty that Mandy just shared with us and continue on to the next parts. Hopefully we're as just quite beautiful as Mandy for the rest. So
Oh,
I'm
thank-
so sorry that I forgot to hand it off to Jennifer. I was just still very moved by Mandy.
Thanks, Manali. So now we are going to discuss a bit about adulthood. And while an individual's cerebral palsy will not decline as they get older, there are a few things that can impact their overall health and wellness. Again, I do recognize that cerebral palsy does not look the same for every person. But the most common challenges that adults with cerebral palsy experience are premature aging, walking or swallowing disorders, mental health conditions, or challenges in the workplace. The symptoms of premature aging are increased pain, difficulty walking or stiff muscles, an increased risk of falls, dental health problems, or long-term side effects due to medications or surgeries. Establishing care with a network of specialists with knowledge of CP, like here at the Weinberg Cerebral Palsy Center, where a team of doctors can work together to develop a comprehensive treatment plan is essential. Adults with CP may also, and this is something common that that I always encounter with some of our adult patients are work accommodations. And adults with CP may experience challenges in the workplace as day-to-day activities such as talking or walking can become more demanding for individuals with CP as they reach middle age. This can impact their performance in the workplace. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the Disability Discrimination Act, the DDA, I believe that's what it's called in the UK. All individuals with a mental or physical impairment are entitled to equal opportunities and independence in their workplace or in education. This means that individuals living with CP cannot be discriminated against in job interviews, school applications, or in the workplace for their condition. Through care coordination, I work with patients, if this is the case, as I have had in the past with some of our patients, through care coordination, I work with patients to connect them with legal services organizations when accommodations are not being provided by their employer. So, for example, I had a patient this past winter that his employer was being extremely difficult with him, and they were not willing to provide proper accommodations, and they didn't understand that. And the patient kept telling me, and this is something that a lot of patients share, that the weather impacts the way that they can move for that day. So the weather, so with colder weather, it was more difficult for this patient to get to work. And the employer was just giving them, there were a lot of challenges around that, and the employer couldn't really understand that. So we had to do a few things, a few letters, and connect this particular patient with some organizations to see what the next steps would be. So this is something common that that I work with adults here, amongst many other concerns in adulthood. Next slide, Manelli.
Sure. Yeah, so I resonate a lot with what Jennifer said, because I have to say that that was a big part of what I saw as well. And like one of like my proud cases of like years ago was that somebody was, and I say proud because it was like, it ended up going to court and like the person won the discrimination case, for disability discrimination case. It was like, yes, finally the court system worked the way it should. So the patient shared with me, it's like, I'm declining, but I can still do this job. I just can't do that commute. That commute takes it so much out of me that I can't do this. And I'm showing that my performance is still the same as long as I can work remotely. And I said to the patient, like, very clearly, I was like, you have to have your job description. Let's look at that. Let's also look at what HR says, and then as well as not only that, human resource when I say HR. And then we also have to contact the Equal Employment Opportunity Office. And then as well as you need to look at the Department of Labor for the state and city that you're in to see what are like what's basically their statutes and their laws that they have there, because everybody differs a little bit, and that's where it gets confusing. So from there, we also got that patient connected to a disability rights lawyer. It's like one of the proudest things. Like, went to court, had to do the case. I had to actually like write a letter. Thankfully, I didn't have to testify. And it is like, to this day, one of the proudest things I am, because they got a huge settlement and they got to keep their job, and they got to keep their job remote. Does it always happen all the time? No, but I am very thankful in the sense that I was able to reach out to friends who know more about the Equal Opportunity Office and then human resource to get their guidance around, like, how do I support this patient, making sure that they have the best court case. And they gave me all the information around, like, you always keep the original job description. Then from there, you keep in contact with a disability rights lawyer that knows more about that. Get involved with Equal Opportunity Office, and then the Department of Labor, have every single thing, and also have this all documented in a journal as you proceed. They had lots of anxiety. We got them connected to therapy. We got to connect them to support groups, but they went through with it and they won the case. So I just want to share that little quick story, which was like really expanded my heart. So here within the next slide, within adulthood, connecting to sort of back to that short story, there are lots of feelings and emotions. And I think that the older you get, the more you should explore your emotions. It is like there are so many nuances to it. I had a client case a few weeks ago, and I've been working with this client for about a year, and we've been processing, and we've been talking about like the feelings that he's having around losing his twin sister. And his twin sister was really much his connection and his care partner in navigating a lot of things, because he needed some help because his fine motor movement wasn't the best in regards to making sure like he gets everything done for his care coordination and everything that he needs for his aides. And losing his sister has been such a huge impact for him. And he was talking to me about the relationship, how it's shifted with the entire family. And he talked about his other siblings. He talked about his parents. And right there, I looked at him and I said, you know what? It really sounds to me as if you're all experiencing guilt, but you're experiencing guilt of this person's death, but from different avenues. And then we just broke it down, because like guilt meant something to him in that particular moment with that particular memory, as it meant different to his other siblings, as it meant different to his parents. But everybody was approaching it from a feeling of guilt. So that's why I bring up this nice vocabulary of a feelings chart, or a vocabulary of emotion chart, because having better vocabulary, having a ways to identify our feelings really helps us connect, explore, and explain to others what's going on with us. So we're going to have another exercise in a bit. I'm going to leave you all to look a little bit at all of them. Disappointed, disgraced, disgusted, distressed, downhearted, embarrassed. Is it okay to go to the next slide? All right. So this next slide here are sensations, vocabulary for sensation. Like when those feelings happen, how are you feeling? Like, how do they show up in your body? How do you know you're feeling them? Because a lot of the times when we're talking about a particular feeling, we know that they happen because something's it's going on in our body. All right. So at this moment, if everyone here can pick 2 sensations, including myself, I'm going to write them down. And also, if the feeling or the sensation that you're experiencing is not in this chart, you can name any other sensation.
It's really funny to put a name to your feelings, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. All right. Did everyone pick out 2 sensations? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So here's the other exercise. So we're going to look at a pleasant situation. So think whatever it may be. So recently here in the US, we had like we had Thanksgiving, which has its own complicated emotions and history around Thanksgiving. But the one good thing about it is that I get to spend time with more of my family. So for me in particular, I'm thinking of the pleasant situation of where I got to spend time with my nieces. And then the sensation I have as I'm thinking about that. Relaxed. And at ease. Yeah. And the thoughts that come with it is that the thoughts, emotions, images, memories, or movements. The thoughts, I'm still like in warmth. The images is that so similar to what we see in Mandy's house, which was in my mother's house, is that she put up all her Christmas decorations, and it's literally a winter wonderland. It's like there's fake snow everywhere. There's different Santa Clauses, Miss Santa Claus all over the room, and a fireplace. And then typically it's like myself and my niece just sitting on the couch, either with like a heated blanket and then just watching something on TV. Typically like one of the first 2 Harry Potter films. Yeah. So that is something that I can share. And who else, or if anyone would like to go around the pleasant situation example.
I'll do it if nobody else wants to.
Yeah.
So my pleasant situation was my little boy's 9th birthday party, watching him have fun with his friends and his big brother. And I guess the sensation was relaxed and easy breathing. I don't know if that's a sensation, but flow. And I can't see what's in the last box too easily with the.
Oh, okay. Let me move my. Is it
Oh,
because
I
I
know,
have
I
lots
can
of
move.
images?
There we go. I can move mine. So the thoughts, just of joy, just watching him have fun, a little pride, and the images I have is him laughing a lot, and it being very easy and relaxed with no tension, and lots of running around and smiling.
Thank you so much, Emma.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the experiential exercises they can easily be like guided journal questions around like exploring either happiness, sadness, anger in that day, and you break it down and then you are able to see your emotions a little bit more. And I'll stop sharing the slides real quick because I think the next couple of slides are just like resources and links, which I'm happy to share at the end. And it's such a great thing to be able to tap into that because you get to look at how your emotions evolve. Because the more in tuned and more mindful you are with your emotions, the more you know how to respond and react during moments of stress, during moments of anger. And even if you don't have the best reaction, you'll be kinder to yourself knowing you didn't have the best reaction in a moment of stress. I saw so many heads shaking, so I wanted to like pause and just look at all of you.
It's just been nice to hear what you because when we first found out that you were coming on a few weeks ago, in one of my thoughts, I wonder what their practices are going to be like, because obviously different places around the world have different ways of doing things. But tonight's really been really nice, and I've been really touched by it. And personally, I'd like to thank you both for. I'm sure Emma and everyone else will, but I've got a lot out of it tonight, and thank you very, very much.
I've got a question actually. You know, when people come to your centre, when they're a child and to adult and to teenager into adult, so a whole team is allocated for that individual, or majority of like what I mean is, so if I'm the person, so I get one team for my needs and for everything.
So like one team member, like an aide?
No, what I'm like, different people have got different jobs, like.
Oh. I think I follow the question now. It's like, so if you come into the center, how is someone cared for? Like, is it Jennifer and myself, or is it multiple people?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It's a whole village. It's a whole village and a half. You do not see a lot of people on the screen, but in regards to the Weinberg Center, but the reason why Jennifer and I exist is because there's a whole bunch of people. So here at the Weinberg Center, we just tapped into different disciplines and we just asked them to specialize in cerebral palsy. So for example, rehabilitation medicine has specific doctors that specialize in cerebral palsy. Majority of them specialize in both childhood and adulthood because they like seeing that transition all the way through of what that looks like. We only have one in the rehabilitation medicine that's just specifically just childhood, but majority of them are just childhood through adulthood, and they follow people throughout their entire lives. Within orthopedics is the same. Like we have orthopedics that follow people from childhood through adulthood through their entire lives. And surgery is something that is less and less recommended the older you get, depending on what's going on. So, but still, it's good to be seen by an orthopedist regardless.
Yeah.
We have also physical therapists, once again, childhood through adulthood. And then
Neurology.
thank you, Jennifer. Neurology, once again, childhood through adulthood, but also within that specialty, then there's movement disorders within like subspecialty of neurology. Then there is the impact of like, let's say, intellectual disorders, if there's folks who are in the autism spectrum, and then we need to look at that a little bit more. So even within each discipline, there's also so like a little bit of a niche within each discipline. So of like more specialty for CP.
Okay, that's very good. We don't get that in the UK at all. So.
I mean, I think it's also important to note that we are fortunate because we have that here in New York City. That's not the case for the rest of the country. We get emails all the time from adults with CP in California, in Texas, in Florida, in Ohio, that they cannot find appropriate care. They're now adults and they can't find appropriate care or resources because they simply do not exist. So there is a network of CP centers here in the US, and we are one of them, but even then, not all of those centers treat adults. So again, we are fortunate that this center does exist here on the East Coast, but it's not the case for the rest of the country.
I think it's interesting. Sorry, Shad. But I think it's interesting that you have specialists who span right the way across from pediatrics to adults. Because in the UK, we did I'm lucky I live fairly near a neurological and rehabilitation medicine specialist centre. So I do have a rehabilitation medicine specialist consultant as an adult, but I only got that after quite a lot of fighting and quite a lot of searching for them. So I was nearly into my 30s by the time I spent about 10 years without any input. But I don't know of anywhere in the UK really where people would still be looked after. Like pediatrics seems to be sort of a separate thing most of the time from adults. And if you do have a pediatric specialist that's got adults on their clinic, like the orthopedic consultant I was under, it's because they're the pediatric specialist, but there's nowhere for those adults to go, so they keep them in their clinic. I know that's happened with, I think, some of the people that Emma and Mariam know as well. So it's an interesting concept that obviously for whatever reason either doesn't happen in Britain or our medical education system doesn't allow it to happen. I just find it quite interesting.
I think if I can just from talking to Debbie Weinberg when we first set up and her watching our journey and us watching their journey, it was a similar situation for them, and they've worked really hard over the last few years to start to change that landscape in the same way as that we're trying to do that in the UK within the healthcare system that we have here. Because the way healthcare is set up in America, it's much easier to have a centre than it is in Britain. But they have done a phenomenal job in the Weinberg Centre to start to change that narrative around the fact that this is not just a paediatric condition, it's a lifelong condition, and therefore people need to begin to specialise. or to understand it from an adult perspective. And I know that the Weinbergs have a lot of focus on their education around educating medical professionals around those things, and it's something that I often feel like if you see someone else is doing it, then it gives you hope that it can be done. So it's great to have those observations and those mentors out there.
I think it sounds to the way the Weinberg Centre seems to operate. It's not the same, but it seems similar to the way that the Weinberg Centre operates here. And Weinberg is a specific type of therapy which is available. It's available in England, but not in some parts of the UK. So, like you just said about, you're the only centre in your kind in America, and it's just, I just thought, it's just, yeah.
No, there's definitely other centers, but going back to what Emma said, yeah, it took years for the Weinberg Center to be where it's at today. I think a lot of what Jennifer and I were talking about in regards to how we can provide it here, that was able to happen. And really, like, it was always an idea. It was always like, it was a slow moving process. It took about a good 10 years. Within the last 5 years, it really got going and you saw it a lot more. And now we just keep growing and expanding. And in particular, where for me in the mental health process, where I'm headed towards, where I think of it is when I think about CP, I think about that individuals with CP cannot exist in silo by itself. We need to look at like the whole family, the family that they've into, the family that they create as they get older, and making sure we're supporting them and everyone in it, but also very much recognizing they are the main focus, but everyone also is supported in there. Took years to get here.
Well, thank you very, very much for what an amazing session. I've learned a lot. I hope everybody else has learned as much as I have. Thank you for your time coming. Oh, I'm just going to pass you over to somebody in my background is having a bit of a meltdown because they don't want to go to bed. I apologise. So I just want to say thank you for coming. It's really good to have those experiential, to be shown some of the ways that we can support our own mental health. One of the things I love about what you're doing in the States is that the focus is not just on physical health, but also on mental health and the interplay between mental and physical health, which I think is really, really important. So thank you very much. Manelli touched a little bit on mindfulness and being mindful. And on that note, just to say that because we've done a month of looking at mental health, we've joined up with 10% Happier, and they are offering everybody a free 3-month trial of their mindfulness app, which we'll be sending out with our newsletter. If you're not already signed up for our newsletter, please go to the website and sign up, and I can send that out to you. I think mindfulness is one of the strategies that we talked about a lot this month. You referred to being mindful in different ways, and certainly it's something that I've learned a lot about. So if you fancy having a go, then they're offering us a 3-month trial for everybody here in the community, and there is a code that you can use. Equally, if you get to the end of the 3 months and you think this is fantastic, we also have another code so you can join the program for a year. So I hope that that you can take advantage of that. Again, if you have any questions, please get in contact with us. I'm sure that I can pass them on to Manelli and to Jennifer if your questions didn't get answered this evening. We will be, if everybody is happy with us posting this. I know we shared some personal things tonight. We have got it recorded. If anybody who spoke feels that they don't want that recording out there, then please get in touch. We won't post it until next week. So please get in touch and let us know whether if you have an issue. If I don't hear from anybody, I'll know that everybody's okay with us sharing that more widely, if that's okay.